Thanks for coming, everybody. I think everybody understands, or you already heard. What have you heard? Tell me what you've heard.
Seven cases.
7 cases, okay, yeah. So, right, we're confirming that there are a report of 7 cases of mumps at the ICE detention facility that's within the city limits of Houston. Couple of things about that. One is we have every reason to believe that the individuals who are ill are still at the facility. The officials there are on top of the case, and they've kept the folks there, so they have not been released to the public. And I think that's one of your biggest questions and your biggest concerns. The other thing is a little bit about mumps is that it's mumps, okay? So we've been dealing with mumps for hundreds of years. It is a common viral illness. It is unique in that it is a vaccine-preventable illness. And so time once was in this country where mumps was prolific, and kids had it all the time, and they passed it from one to the next. We then developed a vaccine, and we have not eradicated it from our community, but we have very, very low levels from year to year, very low levels of mumps in the United States. And so while this number of 7 is small, for this community, that's an uptick. And that's why one of the reasons that it has our attention. I think everyone needs to understand that it is, as I said, it's generally a very mild illness. The symptoms are fever, body aches, loss of appetite, sort of like your usual viral symptoms, followed by a characteristic symptom or sign, actually, that's a swelling of the parotid glands, which are the glands on this side, on the sides of your mouth, and they can be large and very, very painful. And that's sort of the hallmark for mumps. Now, one of the other things about mumps is that while it's very rare, a very small percentage, generally less than 1% of people who become infected with mumps will actually have some very serious consequences. It's a viral illness. And so when you get the fever and you get the body aches, it's because the virus is going throughout your body. It likes to get into those parotid glands in the mouth and make those swell and be painful. And that's one of the reasons why it has that characteristic sign. But it can, in fact, infect almost any organ system in the body. So you can get complications with the kidneys. You can get complications with the liver. You can get complications with the heart. The one we worry about the most are the complications of the brain and the nervous system. And so while very rare, there are a small percentage of folks, generally less than 1%, who will suffer some very serious complications requiring hospitalization. And then, to make it matters worse, some people will suffer permanent consequences, including deafness and other neurologic consequences. So while for the most part, mumps is nothing to be afraid of, since we have a vaccine and we could potentially eliminate it from our community, certainly for those folks that are at risk for having the really serious complications, it's important that we do everything we can to protect our community from mumps. In terms of the vaccine, as I said, it's a vaccine-preventable illness. The CDC recommends 2 doses of the MMR, which is measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. The first one is given to a child when they're beyond 12 months of age, unless there are some special circumstances with the doctors we'll talk about with the parents, is when a child should potentially get immunized at a younger age. But generally, it's at 12 months of age or older. And then again, as they enter school, so about 5 years of age, when they would generally get their second dose. The first 2 doses generally will protect about 97% of the folks who get it. In other words, 97% of the people will develop immunity. So that's important to point out that a few kids who will become adults will actually not, their immune systems do not respond to the vaccine, and so they do not become immunized in spite of that. So even if we had 100% of the population took the vaccine, during their childhood years, we would still have a small percentage of adults who would be at risk for developing mumps if exposed to it, because it's not 100% effective, but it's highly effective. And so that then kind of goes into the concept of one of the reasons we push this is we talk about a term you're going to hear called herd immunity. So imagine that you had a room of 100 people and 97 of them were protected against a particular illness, an infectious illness. And then you introduced one more person. So now you have 101 people in that room, and the one person you introduce has measles, mumps, or rubella, and they're contagious at that point. The chances are that the 3 people in the room who are not infected would not become infected because all the other folks that are immunized would basically act as a cocoon and a layer of protection between them and the one person who is infected. And so that's one of the reasons that herd immunity works. So even though the vaccine may only be 97% effective, for the community, it winds up, in the end, becoming nearly 100% protective for the overall community. Does that make sense? All right. I mean, I think that's a concept that your viewers need to understand. Okay, I think those are all the major points that I wanted to make. Anything I missed? Okay, so I'll take some questions.
Can we talk about those who are infected, children, adults, are they American citizens, were they coming
Yeah.
over?
So these are all adults, and they are all detainees. None of them are employees, so these are all detainees. This is an ICE facility. I don't know the specifics of how folks wound up being detainees there, but these are all detainees, and they're all adults.
So you don't know if they had just came over or if they had been detained while in the
Yeah, no, I don't know that detail yet. Right.
Do you know if they were detained together, if they each contracted the illnesses inside the facility?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we don't know that for a fact yet. We're working with the folks up there. Chances are that some of the folks did become infected while they were there because it's like any other detention facility. You got a large number of people in a relatively small area. And the other thing is that if coming from other countries, we have reason to suspect at this point that they may be coming from countries that don't have high vaccination rates. And so I just use the analogy of a room of 100 people, right? So now you take 100 people, but only 40% of them are vaccinated. Now you introduce the next person. Well, all of a sudden, you're going to get a lot of spread. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Do we anticipate more people becoming infected in that facility?
So we're working with the facility, and this is an important point. I'm going to use two terms that you need to come to understand the difference. They're used interchangeably all the time, but they're very different. One is isolation, and the other word is quarantine. So somebody who is sick and they have the symptoms, they get put into isolation so that nobody gets exposed, or they're isolated from the rest of the community. The folks so these mumps and measles, both of them, you can spread the virus before you have symptoms. So the people that are in contact, you have a case, somebody who develops symptoms, they go into isolation. You then find out who was near them 2, 3 days, 4 days before that. They get put into quarantine. So in quarantine, you have people with no symptoms and no evidence of being ill, but you're waiting to see if they develop symptoms. If they don't, they go back to the general population. If they develop symptoms, they go into isolation. And so we're working with the detention facility to make sure that their isolation and their quarantine procedures are in effect and are being done properly.
So do you anticipate having more? Do you believe that they were isolated quick enough?
Yeah, so at this point, yes, because we haven't seen, the numbers don't seem to be taking off. Right now, this has only been going on for a few weeks, and it's a little bit early to say for sure, but it's going to take time to find out if these procedures are working. If they are, the numbers will start to drop off. If they're not, the numbers will take off. And it's just too early to say for certain right now, but we're working with them. The folks up there seem to understand the concepts. They've got procedures in place, and now we just got to see if they work.
When did you all become aware that there was this concern in their facility?
So we first heard about this in early January, and we've been working with the warden up there and their folks ever since then to get the isolation and quarantine procedures in place. And the other thing that we worry about, we paid a lot of attention to, are the employees, because they come and go every day. So at this point, none of the employees appear to have been exposed. None of them have any symptoms. None of them need to be in quarantine. And so we're pretty confident at this point that our community is well protected, because all of the cases and all of the potential those in quarantine are all among detainees, and they remain on location.
Even from the 2 firefighters were exposed to?
Yes. So we had one of the early cases, patient got transported by ambulance, and so the ambulance crew was exposed, but they were both immunized.
So they were already in the U.S. They had not just come over from the border?
They came, no. So that person was at the detention facility and became sick enough they required hospitalization, and so they were transported. That ambulance crew was immunized, and they're doing fine.
So do you think it was just one person or a few that initially entered the facility and had it from wherever they came from, and then the other spread to the other?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I just, when these things occur, you usually start finding out about them midstream, and so it's kind of hard to go and construct it backwards, especially in the setting where you've got all these folks that have been brought, and I don't understand exactly how ICE works and where these individuals specifically came from, so it's kind of hard to reverse engineer this to answer that question for sure. It would be great to know. It won't change anything we're going to do, but it would be a great thing to understand.
Why did you want to get this information out to the public, being that you said you don't think it's spread?
Yeah, so we didn't really you all asked for this. We didn't ask, we're happy to answer the questions. We want to be totally transparent. So a reporter caught a hold of this today and started asking us questions, and then some other reporters got it at the same time. So we don't think that the public is at any particular risk right now. This is really to help educate, to answer your questions and educate the public. And we're just being completely transparent.
First in early January, what's the last spread to?
I'm sorry?
When was the last it spread to? If the first was early January, when do you know that it spread to the last one?
Yeah, to the last one. So that's a good question. Our epidemiologists know that. Did you guys know? It's not in the last several days. I know that. We've not had any additional cases in the last several days.
Where is the detention facility? Which body?
It's up not far from Intercontinental Airport. It's on Export Drive, I think. What's the name of it? Yeah, I think it's on Export Drive.
Do you know how severe their illnesses are right now? What's next for them?
Yeah. So like I said, with most folks, the mumps is a very mild. It's like, it's not even as bad as having the flu. Body aches, fever, loss of appetite, feeling lousy. We did have one case that required to be evaluated at a hospital. We got transported, but the others have all stayed up there. And from my understanding from the warden and his folks up there is that they're recovering as expected.
So we expect them to all make full recovery?
Yeah.
Do you know how soon until if they can be released, they will be released?
So once they're past their illness and their symptoms are gone, one thing, they are now immune. They can never catch it again. Number two, they can't spread it to anybody. There's no such thing as an asymptomatic carrier state with some other diseases. So once they're over the illness and they're feeling better, it's up to ICE whatever happens. So we from a public health standpoint, will have no worry about those individuals.
You don't have a timeline of how long it takes for someone to get over that type of illness?
It's about from start to finish. It's about 10 days. It's like most viral illnesses. It's about a 10-day course.
Have there been more than the 7, or is it just these 7?
No, just those 7. Yeah.
Okay.
And the one hospitalized is recovering well too?
Yeah, my understanding is that individual is already back to the detention facility. That's my understanding.
And are we assuming that they were not vaccinated?
Well, good question. They're coming, so each of these cases are individuals. I don't have all the detail on each individual one yet. That's part of what we're getting from the warden. So I can't really answer your question, but in a more global sense, they are coming from countries that have low vaccination rates. So I don't know, I can't answer the question about the actual individuals, but they're coming from countries that have very low vaccination rates. One of the countries in particular, in Honduras, has started vaccinating about a decade ago, started vaccinating folks, but the whole population still has a low percentage of people that are vaccinated.
Do you know the other countries that they're from? Do you have a list of any international?
Yeah, they're actually from they're actually from all around the globe, but most of them are from Central America.
So there's no concern that any of these individuals were ever already here in the U.S.?
Correct. Not right. My understanding is that they all came from where? Is that what you were asking earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, I misunderstood your question.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that they've all come. That's my understanding, but I don't want to say that I know that absolutely but my understanding is they're all from the border. Yeah.
Does the spread of the virus, are you concerned about the cleanliness or the state of the facility that they're being held in? Could that be a factor in the spread?
Not really. It has more to do with how dense the population is being kept together. The mumps virus, unlike the measles virus, the mumps virus doesn't live terribly long on inanimate surfaces. Now, the measles virus is different. The measles virus will hang out in a room in the air for 2 hours and on inanimate objects for longer than that. But the measles virus, the mumps virus, not so much. So it's really about how close people get together, and then you have to spread. So it's a cough, it's a sneeze, somehow it gets spread from one person to the next. So when you're in a room with lots of space in between people, it's not going to spread very well. You cram them all in close together. This is where you're going to start to see that spread. We see these types of things when we have, like during the floods, and we use the George R. Brown or other places as shelters, and you're putting lots of people in close together again. We start worrying about viral outbreaks. Now, the virus that we've seen historically there has been the norovirus, which causes vomiting and diarrhea. That's also the one that, unfortunately, the cruise ship industry has to wrestle with all the time. But it's the same thing. It's when you get a lot of people and you put them in close together and you keep them there for prolonged periods of time, that viruses start to easily spread. It's the close contact.
How dense is the detention facility?
Yeah, I don't know, but it is a detention facility. So I suspect it is not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a vacation setting. I don't know how to word it. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that they're probably maximizing the use of their space.
So if some of them first got the illness in the beginning of January and the entire period is 10 days, is it possible that some of them are, first of all, over?
Yes.
They're done.
Yeah, yeah.
They're short. So
Yeah.
it's not accurate to say that you have 7 current cases of mumps.
Correct. They're not some current cases. Some people have gotten better and been returned to the general population, but we have 7 cases of mumps that occurred up there since January.
So how many do you know are ill now?
Ill today. I won't know that till tomorrow.
Okay, and then when you say they've returned to the general population, you mean they have been released, or they're
No,
generalized population?
in the generalized population inside the facility, right?
Okay, but we just know we've had 7 total cases.
Correct.
Uncertain of how, do you have a percentage of how many are probably okay today or better today?
Looking at the lines, I'm going to say, all right, I'm on camera, but don't quote me, right?
You're fine.
I'm guessing probably half or more are probably past their illness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be safe to say that you guys aren't really anticipating more people
No,
being
no.
infected? Okay.
But that's all going to go to how well the people there do their isolation and quarantine, right? That's the key factor.
But you guys, there's no active concern that more
Right.
detainees.
And that kind of goes to the other question. We're having this
Yeah.
today because you all asked for it, not because we felt we needed to get a message out quickly to the public. This is serving you, not you asking you to serve us this time. And by the way, thank you, because when we do ask you to serve us, when we do have an important message to get out to the community, we call you and we really do need your help. You know, from a public health standpoint, our single most powerful, I'm going to use the word weapon against illness is public messaging. You are, absolutely the thing that's going to make or break this community. When we do have something go bad, it's going to be the media that's going to make or break and how we can get that message out. We talk about, immunizing and giving post-exposure prophylaxis and getting people antibiotics and stuff during these disasters and stuff. That's going to be a huge, huge effort, right? But a lot of that can be avoided if we get our public messaging out. So part of it is you all started asking us, we want to work with you. So this is us working with you today because you asked for this, as opposed to us saying, hey, here's something scary going on, we need to get the word out.
One more question. The people, adults out there today who know that they weren't immunized as kids, what is your message to them? I mean...
Right. So people who are born before 1957, we don't worry about too much because measles, mumps, and rubella were so prolific in the United States at that time. They're probably immune. They were probably exposed when they were kids, and whether they became clinically ill and have a memory of having the disease or not, they are probably immune because they were exposed since they were born before 1957. Since 1957, when we started getting the vaccine and pushing the vaccine out, there's a period where folks, depending on how aggressive their family were in getting vaccines, may or may not. It wasn't like in 1957, everybody started getting vaccinated, right? But certainly by the mid-1960s, people who were born in the mid-1960s or afterwards, they were probably immunized and they're probably good. There is a blood test that your doctor can perform to find out if you're immune. It takes about a week to 10 days to get back and get the blood test. The other thing is you can just get vaccinated. So you can either get the 2 vaccinations now as an adult, or if you think you had one maybe and you want to get another one, you can do that. The vaccine is not expensive, and you can't, if you got vaccinated as a child and you get vaccinated again as an adult, it's not going to hurt you.
You said the two firefighters who were exposed, they were quarantined?
No, they were previously immunized, so they were good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What is it that tells you the virus did not walk out with workers upon their arrival?
Say that again?
What is it that tells you the virus didn't walk out of the facility with workers upon their arrival? So
there was a window when there was probably virus going around inside the facility before they knew it, before the facility knew it, right? Well, we're way past that now. So if that had happened, they would have got sick. They would have had symptoms, and that never happened. So that's how and today, the workers up there are they've got those measures in place to make sure they don't become exposed. And so we really think that there's extremely little chance that a worker today could walk out with the virus. You're right, though. In the beginning, before they knew what was going on up there was opportunity. But that was weeks ago. We're way past the window for that to have happened.
Is there much waning of the immunization effectiveness over the years? I was reading some old national clips about some of these cases that in this resurgence, people have been immunized.
Yeah. So it goes back to a couple of things. One is about 3% of the population gets immunized that their body just doesn't respond to the immunization. That's about 3% of the population. And just last night, I was sort of anticipating this question, and there's debate right now as to whether or not there's any sort of waning of it. The CDC's official view is that no. If you were immunized twice as a kid, you're good. But there is conversation along those lines. There's research being done. I think right now that the official answer is that no, you don't need to worry about it, but rest assured that people are asking that question. Maybe a year or two from now we'll have a different answer, but today the answer doesn't appear to be an issue.
When was the last time there was a cluster like this? I saw in the clips of prison one about a year ago, but
Yeah.
beyond that, anything?
No, so actually, we had 2 cases here in 2017 in Houston, and going back to 2014, those are the only ones that I've got on our list. Okay?
Is there any update on the measles cases?
No, we don't really have any update on the measles cases, which is good news, right? So we have no new cases. So steady she goes with that. And the other thing, bringing up the measles, it is the same to your viewers and the parents and the adults out there. It's the same vaccine. It just happens to be measles, mumps, and rubella. So you actually, if you've got concerns, go talk to your doctor, and it's the same vaccine.
Can you just kind of elaborate on how important it was for those first responders to be immunized, being in this position? Because this is not the first time that something like this will and can happen.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So being a first responder, whether it be going into a dark alley with gunfire, walking into a burning building, or picking up somebody who's sick in the back of an ambulance, there is risk that occurs when you're a first responder. And so we try to prepare people as best we can. So with police officers, they learn how to, manage their weapons, and they know when to draw on fire. Firefighters know how to get in their bunker gear, know whether that building is safe or not, even though it's on fire to go into. And with our EMTs and paramedics, we train them about infectious disease, and we stress the importance of them being immunized against communicable diseases. And so there's a lot of training that goes into that. They were immunized. The system worked in that case. All right, folks, listen, it's Saturday. You all got deadlines. I've got other stuff I have to do as well. Thank you.